Good evening and welcome to the Late Debate in the week of a momentous budget where Chancellor George Osborne attempted to set the tone for the rest of the Parliament and maybe just boost his chances of moving from number 11 to number 10 Downing Street in a couple of years' time. But his bold vision was not shared by everyone.
Britain's weak productivity is also driven by the fact that too much of our economic strength is concentrated in this capital city. This is unhealthy and unproductive, and we must achieve a better settlement for the future, not by pulling London down. One of the first pieces of advice I received in the Treasury was to cancel the plan for the Crick Institute, the Tate Modern Extension and Crossrail. But I rejected that advice because I've always believed it's to our nation's great advantage that we have one of the world's great capitals. Now we're working with the Mayor on what this city will need in the future with projects like Crossrail 2 and the exciting development of the Olympic Village.
A key part of modernising infrastructure is building homes, and we've got the biggest housing crisis for a generation. With home ownership falling, building half the homes we need, and the costs of renting or buying soaring out of reach, especially in London and the South East. Whilst it's right to help people pass on their family home to their children, more important than giving inheritance tax relief for homes worth millions is helping millions more people own their own homes.
Well, a clear division of views there, and I suspect that may be reflected in my panel for tonight's show. For Labour, the new Edmonton MP, Kate Osamor. For the Conservatives, the Cities of London and Westminster MP, Mark Field. The new Labour MP for Greenwich and Woolwich, Matthew Pennycook. And the new Conservative MP for Sutton and Cheam, Paul Scully. Warm welcome to you all. Mark, let me begin with you. How can George Osborne really say this is a budget for working people when he's freezing or slashing the benefits working people actually get?
Well, let's be honest, doing some great things in relation to a living wage, something I've been very passionate about even as a Conservative MP here in London, and I think greatly to the credit of a lot of private as well as public sector bodies here in the capital. We've introduced the living wage. Yeah,
but all that's going to be counted by the cuts in benefit.
No, some of it will be counted to a certain extent by elements of the cuts in benefit, and I accept that the whole issue of working tax credits have now spiralled totally out of control. I mean, they came in, there was a promise made by Gordon Brown back in 1996 before he reached number 11 Downing Street to say this was going to cost no more than £600 million a year. Working tax credits are already themselves well over to 10 billion out of a total of 30 billion. It's got really out of control, and we need to address this.
Let's put that too, Kate. I mean, it started out, Labour introduced tax credits. It initially cost £1 billion, I think I'm right to say. It's now £30 billion. That's not sustainable, is it?
Well, what's not sustainable is the drivers as to why we actually need tax credits. Well, the problem is that the wages are too low, and that's what we should be looking at.
That's what George Osborne had in mind, I think.
Anyway, carry on.
Well, that may be what's in mind, but it's not until 2020. So if we are going to remove tax credits, what are those families going to do? How are they going to survive? And what we're going to see is an upsurge of more people needing food banks, and that shouldn't be happening in a country which is supposed to be progressive.
Shouldn't be happening in a otherwise prosperous city like London either, where, you know, a woman perhaps with 3 kids finds her tax credits cut. The amount she earns to qualify has been slashed to just over £3,000. People are going to find it really hard, aren't they?
John, tax credits are a really blunt instrument. I think this is one of the problems. When you've got a system that actually people up to, I think it's £73,000 odd pounds can actually claim a degree of tax credits, that's a very much of a blunt instrument. We need to focus, which I think the Chancellor has started to do, on the lower paid and making sure that they get the support that they need.
But you're hurting the lower paid.
No, I think we're not. We're looking at the national living wage, and so, as Mark has said, that is actually countering a lot of the increases in the allowances at other points, and it means that we're going to stop taking away tax credits at higher levels.
What's your response to the point made by George Osborne yesterday? It really is crazy and not fair, where people within the system getting things like tax credits enjoy a better lifestyle and in some cases enjoy much fairer or easier rent than those outside the system.
I don't actually think that stacks up, and I'd just like to take on a point that both Paul and Mark said. I sat on the Living Wage Foundation's advisory board for many years. This isn't a living wage that George Osborne's introduced. It's an enhanced minimum wage, and while it's welcome, it doesn't in any way offset the deep cuts to child tax credit that have been implemented in the budget. And that's why you will get many working, low-paid families thousands of pounds worse off as a result. Yeah. And I don't think that's sustainable.
The proof of the pudding's in the eating, isn't it, actually, Mark? But at the end of the day, despite all these alleged giveaways and all these great concessions, etc., the Chancellor is going to be collecting £5.8 billion more in revenue than he did before this budget was announced.
Well, he is, and actually, funnily enough, you'll probably see more in the weekend newspapers. Some of the concerns come from small businesses that where there is going to be an increased tax burden because of the way in which dividends will operate. But that's trying to balance things. I mean, the reality is we are still living miles beyond our means as a country. Because interest rates have been as low as they have for 76 consecutive months, we've lulled ourselves into a false sense of security that somehow the worst is over. I mean, it's downside worse in Greece and in much of the Eurozone, but we've got a long way to go.
We don't want to finish up like Greece. I mean, in fairness, the other thing he has done, he's taken 1,000 people out of the tax system altogether, and he's actually given a tax cut to, according to his estimates, some 30 million people. You can't complain about that.
Well, what I have to, make sure everyone understands is that constituencies like myself, the one that I represent, Edmonton, over 72% of the constituents rely on tax credits. So the economy is not working for them. And if we're going to slash tax credits, what are we saying to those people? Are we saying that it's okay for you to live, in poverty? And it's not okay. So yes, we do need to make an economy that works, but we have to make sure that everybody is able to participate in that.
Why pick on 18? We're talking about housing benefits now. I mean, why pick on 18 to 21-year-olds? Why abolish housing benefits for them? Many of whom, according to certain charities here in London, would say, many of whom will actually now be homeless because they can't, for very good reason, live at home. Isn't this the return of the nasty party?
No, I don't think it is. I think actually what we've done over the last few years is make sure that a lot of post-18-year-olds are actually getting into employment, education or training, and I think this is what we've got to persist with and continue with to make sure they're in meaningful employment. But what about those who genuinely
can't live at home for very good reasons?
Then we can look at support, because what I was saying before, things like tax credits and other benefits at the moment have been very much of a blunt instrument. What Kate was just saying about the fact that 72% of people in Edmonton may be reliant on tax credits. Tax credits, as I say, they're going up to people earning well above the average wage. Yeah. So that 72% figure is a slightly distorted figure.
Which brings me to another point. People living in council homes or social housing, they're going to have to pay an economic rent. And many people watching this programme, I think, say, well, why shouldn't they? Why should they enjoy a better lifestyle than me? Even if they are working, why should they get their rent subsidised?
Well, in a sense, I don't agree that council rents are a subsidy, and the investment we've made in council housing over many years has been returned many times over. And if we believe in mixed communities, as I thought all parties did, then we don't want to drive out people who have done well and or saved and or have progressed in the jobs market to just drive them out of particular parts of London. I just
will it drive them out?
Well, it may do, I think, in particular, the right to buy extension into housing associations certainly will, if the Chancellor's other measures.
I think the right to buy stuff, I think there are some very specific issues for London, and I agree with Matthew. And I've been saying this up front, that actually this is not going to work as well in London as it might do in other parts of the country. I think we will need to look at either making exceptions. And to answer Kate's point, I know Kate's making a very valid...
Are you saying the Chancellor's wrong about this?
No, I'm not saying he's wrong about it. I think he's right.
On London?
No, I think there are some specific issues, particularly around central London, where the disparity between the social rented sector for identical flats is where you're paying 3 times the rent compared to...
The point you're going to make to Kate was...
The point I want to make, Kate, was this, and where I think you're right, is actually the issues are really about skills. We're living in a big global city, a globalised world, and there are a lot of people who just simply haven't got the skills to be able to demand the salaries that will mean they can be out of the child credit type trap. And I think one of the things that has been very positive about not just this budget, but over the last 2 or 3 years, we have made a commitment to getting more skills, more apprenticeship. That just takes time, and I accept there is a short-term problem, but if we don't skill our workforce properly, then we will have problems for many years to come.
And I totally agree with you, but what we need to be doing is ensuring that we focus on upskilling, our society. And if we're not doing that, but we are taking away the support that they need, then they're going to fall on their face, and then they will not be able to, compete.
Let's talk about young people for a moment more. University maintenance grants are going to be abolished, and they're going to be replaced by loans. Why, again, isn't this going to cause some young people, poorer young people, in big cities like London to think twice about secondary education, deter them from going into secondary or further education?
If you look at what happened to tuition fees, I think that was the argument that was put then, and the contrary actually happened. University admissions carried on going up, and so I think if you frame it in the right way and actually explain...
But do loans work? I mean, so many students don't pay back the loan. The government finish up picking up the bill.
But I think they do, because actually what they do is that they enable people who are going to go on to earn a reasonable income the opportunity to actually educate themselves rather than general taxpayer paying for them at that level. It also makes them a consumer, so hopefully they're actually challenging the education that they're getting at university as well.
We shouldn't forget either, of course, it was Labour who introduced tuition fees in the first place, which caused students a great deal of distress.
And introduced the maintenance grant to help those on low incomes, and I think we have to look very carefully at the impact this has on helping those low-income individuals go to university and be able to repay it back. The system as it currently stands is unsustainable, and it needs to be looked at again, and I think grants are a part of that. But the budget as a whole really does penalise young people. It's not just the housing benefit, which you mentioned, John, the ending of maintenance grants. That enhanced minimum wage that the Chancellor introduced doesn't apply to anyone under 25.
Mustn't you accept, Kate, that, I mean, overall, looking at the big picture, what George Osborne has been doing for the last 5 years is working. The economy is now much stronger. It's perhaps the most advanced economy in terms of growth in the Western world. You've got to hand it to him. It is at a cost, albeit it is working.
Well, it's working for a small group of people, and what I have to make sure gets across in this show is that for young people that are under the age of 25, for people that are living in very poor families, they're not going to be able to go to university. They're not going to be able to change their chances so that they can actually help the economy to work.
And there's more to come, 20 billion more sometime in the future. It's going to get even worse, isn't it?
It's not getting worse. I mean, we still have got a long way to go. We've got a big accumulated debt and an ongoing deficit. I think in fairness, Kate, I would say that, I mean, you say it's only a minority. I mean, I think, the election result shows that people recognise that we were on the right path, but it is going to be a long path, and it would be wrong to go back to square one.
Whether they agree with that now, I don't know, after the budget.
I'm going to pause you all because I want to move on to another subject. I want to take a look at another part of that budget speech which touched on a burning topic for all Londoners.
And Mr Deputy Speaker, in every budget I also find an opportunity to fund the commemoration of famous events from our history and the buildings that symbolise them, and this budget is no exception. The RAF's Group Fighter Command Centre in West London was the place where the Battle of Britain was directed from, and it badly needs repair. I want to thank the new member, my honourable friend for Uxbridge, for bringing to my attention the dilapidated state of his campaign bunker. Let its renovation stand as a monument to the heroes of the Battle of Britain and the days when aeroplanes flew freely over the skies of West London.
Well, a cheeky reference there to Heathrow expansion, which Boris didn't exactly enjoy. It comes in the wake of the Davies Commission, which earlier this month recommended that Heathrow rather than Gatwick should be expanded. It's claimed 5 cabinet members are opposed to Davies, not to mention the mayor himself and his wannabe successor, Zach Goldsmith, and many other London MPs as well. Let's kick off again with you, Mark. I mean,
it's very sweet of you, John.
I know. Where do you stand? Because let's not forget, David Cameron said no third runway, no ifs, no buts. He now seems to be wavering. Are you?
Not so much wavering, but my own constituency, right in the centre of London, we will be affected by the enlarged flight paths.
You were against it initially. Why do you stand
Well, it's being against it. So my concern, obviously, at the constituency level, but I look at Crossrail, the great development that happened there, went through a lot of districts. There were no votes in it for me, but I've always supported it because I could see in the national interest we need more infrastructure. No, listen, I personally would have preferred Gatwick as an option. However, the Davies Commission was unequivocal in favour of going down the Heathrow route. Now,
I think Gatwick had a plausible case too.
I think they did, but actually Davies said, listen, we feel there's a much stronger case to be made for Heathrow. That was the reason that the government decided to commission.
So what you're saying to me is you are now in favour?
No. Personally, my view is I think the government needs to get on with it. The one thing that
and do it.
That the UK needs, but actually London particularly needs, as a global financial centre, we absolutely need to have more.
So yes or
capacity.
no? Are you for it?
Listen. If the government pushes ahead with this, with Davis, it will get my support.
Okay. What about the Labour Party? I'm puzzled by the Labour Party. They seem split on it too. I mean, the leadership says we're all in favour, but then I hear other dissenting voices. What's your own opinion?
Well, I just feel that the government are dithering over this matter. They just need to get on with it and ensure that all the checks and balances around environment are done. And
So you're in favour, assuming they can control the pollution levels?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think Kay makes a good point. The pollution is a problem.
That is a problem.
And it does need to properly be dealt with. I think there are going to be issues about the funding of it as well. I mean, but let's get on with it.
Paul, where do you stand on this? Because your party is obviously. I mean, Boris has said he's going to lie down in front of the bulldozer. It's a picture I can't wait to take myself. Zach Goldsmith.
I feel sorry for the bulldozer.
Yeah, absolutely. Who comes that worse?
Richmond MP says he'll actually resign from the party and stand as an indie.
Look, I mean, I think there is a difference of opinion in the Conservative Party. There's a difference of opinion in the Labour Party. I'm actually pro Gatwick. I think that's got more benefits for my constituency in Sutton and Cheam, and I think the flight path for Heathrow looks as though it's expanded. Heathrow looks as though it's going to go over Worcester Park in my constituency, my area. But when I was out on College Green with Zach Goldsmith and Boris Johnson, we were joined by Tom Brake for the Lib Dems and a number of Labour MPs in West London as well. So there is a real concern. This isn't something that's just the Conservative Party that's split on it.
So we'll come to a vote. What should he vote for? Gatwick or Heathrow?
It's going to be difficult. One thing I do agree with Mark that it has to go through. We have to start work on something now. Yeah. I would go for Gatwick.
If it creates 77,000 jobs and boosts the economy by I can't remember how many billions, but it's an incredible figure. What's the opposition to it? I mean, are you in?
I think the opposition is, and this is where Kate made a good point, is that if it met those air quality, noise pollution, and other conditions which Davis said it needs to meet, and I actually am quite sceptical about a third runway at Heathrow ever meeting those tests.
Me too. I live under the flight path. Let me declare an interest. I am extremely sceptical about
that. And on that basis, I mean, I think for me personally, air pollution and the poor air quality that we suffer from London is such an important issue that I think the impact on the health and lives of Londoners, particularly in West London, is something that has to be at the heart of the final decision.
I don't wish to libel the boss of Heathrow in any way, shape or form, but he was saying in a newspaper article, if he was quoted correctly the other day, that despite the fact there's going to be 260,000 more flights, he said aircraft are getting quieter. Well, I live under the flight path, and I have to tell you, Mark, they don't seem to be getting quieter to me. And if you're going to bring another 260,000 flights in per year, that's a heck of a lot more.
No, I appreciate that. I think, listen, pollution levels and noise levels are not going to be as bad as they were. But as you say, if you're getting more and more of it, you're not going to feel there's any great benefit. One of the other benefits that Davis tried to put into place was to say he would try and reduce the number of night flights. I think that's what a lot of us feel. If you're living in the middle of a big city, I mean, I live just by Victoria Station, my goodness, we had work going on there for the best part of 10 years. If you're living in the middle of a big city, you expect noise, but you do expect to be able to get to sleep between, say, midnight and 7.
Can I just come back to you and clarify, are you saying no to any kind of expansion anywhere? Is that your position?
No, I think we do have to look at it. I think that in terms of impact on London, I think Gatwick probably had, I'm not a cheerleader for Gatwick, but I think it had a case for having a less severe impact on London. I think Heathrow needs to be improved, but it has to meet those safeguards, and I can't see a case at the moment that it does, and I think that's where the opposition is coming from both parties.
Bearing in mind those extra flights that you were talking about coming into Heathrow, they are all coming over the capital city. There's not many cities in the world, if any, that actually have a steady stream of flights.
I think one of the proposals is, one of the arguments is that most of the pollution which you're concerned about, we all should be concerned about, and which is way in excess of what is allowed at the moment, never mind in the future when all these extra planes come in. Most of that pollution is caused by the motorway, right? And the proposal is to put the motorway in a tunnel and take the aircraft away from the area it is further west. Now, would that satisfy you? I mean, do you think that's possible?
Well, I don't know if it's possible, but I think we just have to be realistic that there is a demand for it, and how are we going to meet those demands? But we have to make sure that our health is, comes first.
And if Boris lies down in front of the bulldozer when all this happens, Mark, where will you be? We're behind him in your tin hat.
I was going to say, probably along with George Osborne driving the bulldozer. I shouldn't say that.
But I'll tell you what, there must be a load of London residents dreading the fact that the M25 is going to be dug up yet again in the west of London.
Yeah. Which is another issue for another day. But today, the transport focus is not just in the skies above London, but on the underground as well, because today's tube strike meant millions had to walk, cycle, bus or even cruise down the river to work. The strike's over, The introduction of 24-hour weekend running on some lines this autumn. The unions say the scheme's being imposed without enough consultation, a view strongly disputed by the aforementioned Mayor Boris Johnson. Let me counsel a few opinions. Let's start with Matthew this time around. You saw the disruption today. I mean, it's been hell out there for thousands and thousands of people. Can they justify this strike action?
But I think the central point is that both sides need to get back around the table and come to a negotiated settlement. It's been hugely disruptive. It's cost London's economy a huge amount of money. I personally didn't mind. I don't think some of my constituents did, in that we got the lovely riverboat up from Greenwich into central London. But, that disruption can't happen again, and no one wants to see a strike. And both sides need to get back around the table.
Mark?
Yeah, I think it's pretty depressing. Tube drivers are not poorly paid by any standards.
£50,000 a year, some allegedly.
Yeah, which is... So I think it's pretty depressing that they've gone on strike, particularly in a week where we remember 7/7,
Sure.
Remember the great sacrifices that were made by people working in London Underground.
And people who struggle to get into work and get back from work today will also bear in mind that apparently, according to their bosses, these people who work on the tube system went on strike today are being offered £2,000 a year extra, a £500 bonus for accepting this scheme in the first place, and as I say, some of them earn £50,000 a year. It's not on the face of it the most sympathetic case, is it?
Well, on the face of it, there's a lot of scaremongering. At the end of the day, both sides need to get around the table. The negotiations, or the lack of negotiations, have been going on for over 3 months. So for workers to have to go out on strike, it's not being done, by the click of a finger. It's been done because they've had to. They've had no choice.
Some of these unions create that impression from time to time in the view of some people.
Well, I mean, that's fair and well that people may feel that way. But I think what's important is that we look at the reasons why people feel that they need to go out on strike, and it is around 24 hours.
The accusation is, Paul, I was going to say, the accusation is that these proposals were put to the unions, and the unions are only given 4 hours to make up their minds, which they can't do. I mean, they're required to put these proposals to their members. You can't do that in 4 hours.
I mean, the 24-hour running has been talked about for a long time now, and I don't doubt that shift patterns are a really important subject to be negotiating on, but I think the train unions, the tube unions, are always far too quick to strike, and that's why I think they're struggling to carry public sympathy in this case.
All right.
And driverless change, that's going to come even more quickly. This it makes the case in many ways to say, let's get it automated as quickly as we can.
Just a final point, going back to the budget. I mean, the headlines this morning are saying that George Osborne did enough in this budget to suggest that he might be the next leader of the party when David Cameron stands down. Should you share that view?
It's a long way to go, and I'm sure that was not in George Osborne's mind. I mean, in many ways, I think that the budget...
Oh, no?
No. Listen, it's going to be... It's got a 4-year wait, apart from anything else, I suspect, at least. But no, I think more importantly, and it struck me with this budget, there was an element that it was trying to bring some threads from all parties.
Quick word about
if they elect George Osborne on the leader of this budget, I'd be surprised. I think it's a budget of failure. It's not only the cuts to working people in terms of tax credits. We've had £47 billion worth of overall tax rise in this budget, another £3.5 billion of extra borrowing, and exports down, productivity down. In terms of a stewardship of a sustainable economy, I think this is an appalling budget.
Got to pause it there. Thank you all very, very much indeed. Thank you to all my guests tonight. That was Kate, to Mark, to Matthew and to Paul. I'll be back with the Late Debate in September. That's after the summer recess. Until then, thank you very much indeed for watching. If you're having a summer break, I do hope you enjoy it, and do try and join us next time we're on air. Bye-bye.